Hi AP Seminar, Mr. Muller here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the process of research level 2. How do you go from a working thesis or a working claim to an argumentative essay? What is the process to get you there? That's level 2 research, and that's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be a bit of a longer video because this process is long, but if you go through it correctly, you'll be successful on argumentative essay or presentation. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's get started. Now, here's the overall process for level 2 research. And again, the end goal of level 1 research is to have a working claim. And again, that could change as you go throughout this process. So once you have a working claim, you're first going to find more credible sources to investigate this topic further in order to gather more subclaims and credible evidence to make the argument. When you find those sources, you're going to annotate them, find the main ideas, and then make note cards so you not only can build an analysis and synthesis, but you also have evidence. Once you have those, you're going to make annotated bibliographies, which allow you to not only summarize the information, but assess its credibility, note any connections to other sources as well. It's a lot like an article summary. When you've done that, you're going to update your idea map as you're going throughout that process to revise your working claim and see if it needs to be changed at all. After you've gathered proper amount of resources, you're then going to gather any subclaims or reasons that you've collected, attach them to evidence, and then you're going to create an outline that includes the analysis and synthesis of your claims to evidence and your evidence together. So that's the entire process. Let's go a little bit more in depth. Now again, the end goal of level 1 research is to have a working claim done. And the reason why you need a working claim is so that that's going to direct more of the research that you're going to be doing. You had a specific research question, you've got a tentative answer, so now you're going to do more research into that topic and see if that needs to be changed at all. But you really can't go too in depth without having at least a direction of where you're going to be going. Now, one thing I want to let you know is you may end up completely changing that working claim or working thesis as you find more sources. That's fine. As long as it still answers the research question, that is fine. Research is a process where you take a step back, sometimes to take a step forward. Now, once you have that claim all set, let's say you've got the resources together, you've updated your idea maps, you've got a strong final claim. Well, you have to make sure that it's evaluated, that it's significant. And one easy way to do that, and I've got a couple of suggestions on these slides. You don't have to use that kind of specific logic. But one thing I want to emphasize is the bottom, where it says if the reverse of a claim seems obviously false or trivial, which is pointless, then readers are likely to think the original claim is not worth an argument. And the reason why is you have to argue something where it's debatable, where there can be multiple perspectives about it. And if the reverse of your claim doesn't make any sense, it's not worth arguing. For instance, if you're going to argue the sky is blue and the reverse is the sky isn't blue, well, I can tell the sky is blue because I can see outside. So it's not worth arguing. Now, once you have a working claim, you're going to try and find sources that will help you delve more into that research question and answer that research question. Now, you have to know what kind of evidence you want to look for. Again, you want primary sources, you want things from journals. If you're having some trouble finding enough sources from professional journals, try to go into credible periodic sources. Just note you're going to have to defend their credibility. You also have to think, what's going to be the best combination of data to prove my argument? Sometimes, depending on your topic, it's going to be a lot of numbers and data statistics. Sometimes it's going to be a lot of quotes from experts. Sometimes it's going to be a lot of primary sources, especially if you're doing something more from a history or lit base. The best answer is you're going to want a combination of everything, if you can, because that shows that you've gotten sources and evidence from a wide range of places, and it really strengthens your overall argument. Now, let's say you go through the process from the previous video and you've found those sources and you found that that's relevant after looking at the abstract and briefly looking at the introduction and conclusion. The first thing you're going to do before you read it and annotate it and try to find out all the main ideas and try to highlight important phrases, take a note card out and record the bibliographic information. And the reason why is you don't want to make a mistake about plagiarism. Sometimes if you forgot what you read and you didn't note where you got those ideas from, and you throw that into your paper and it gets caught by turning it in, you plagiarized. Not maliciously, but you still plagiarize. So make sure you're always recording which sources you're going through to get your ideas. Now, once you've got all your sources, and again, for about every 250 words, you want to consult about 2 sources generally. When you've got those, and you've read through them, you've annotated them, all right, you're ready to pull out important information as evidence for your argument. You're going to record these on note cards. This is not only going to record very important bibliographic information for your reference page, not only is this going to be a great place to keep all of the evidences that you want to use, but it's also a great place to get all the information for your signal phrases and for analysis and synthesis. On the top left, you're going to include the author, title, and page number. The top right is any keywords so that if you're trying to figure out how evidences can be connected, that's going to help. The body is going to include a summary of what the source is trying to do, because that's part of a signal phrase, the quote or the paraphrase that you're going to be putting in, and the thoughts about how you can extend that out. So what's the analysis? What does that source or evidence mean? How can you connect that source to another piece of evidence? You're going to try and note those things together. Now in the slides, I've got a link down here. You can actually click on some examples and see what some of these note cards actually looked like. So go to the slide and you can open that link up. It's ready for you to go. Let's say you've got all those note cards together. Something else you can do, and when we practice this in semester 1, you'll be doing note cards and annotated bibliography and an outline for everything. Semester 2, you're going to have a choice. You don't have to do all 3 steps, but I want you to practice all 3 in the first semester so that you know which ones are going to be most effective for you. After you've got your note cards, you're going to do an annotated bibliography, which is basically an article summary where you summarize the text and evaluate the source. What's really important with the source evaluation is that it shows any holes in credibility. So if you use that in your paper, you can note those aspects of credibility and justify that choice. If you don't, it's going to hurt your overall argument. And if you'd like to see some examples of an annotated bibliography, you can again look on this slide. I've got some examples linked that you can take a look at, and I highly suggest you do so. So, let's say you've got all your sources, you've got your note cards, annotated bibliography. You know, one thing you have to decide is when you're trying to pick your evidence together, are you going to do a quote, or are you going to paraphrase? Now, summarizing is also a point, and that mostly comes in your signal phrases to establish relevance. The general rule is that you paraphrase when you can represent what a source says more clearly than it does. So if you're looking at the quote there and you're saying, you know what, it'd be tough for a reader to really understand the point that author's making, then paraphrase. But you should quote if the evidence is, the quote directly will back up your subclaims, it comes from a very strong authority, or it's strikingly original. So think about it this way. What's a better way to use that evidence to support your claim? Should it be in a paraphrase, or is that quote, what's said in that evidence, stronger than any paraphrase you can do? That's the decision that you have to make. When I do my grad paper, sometimes it's paraphrasing because a quote just isn't going to capture what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's a quote because it's really strong and it's going to better support the claims that I'm making. Now, once you've gone through those sources, you got the note cards, you got the annotated bibliography, and you've decided if you're going to do quotes or paraphrasing for those sources, now you want to sort all that data that you have, all those note cards, annotated bibliographies, and based on the evidence that you're finding, determine what your subclaims and your evidences are going to be. This is also when you reevaluate your working claim. If it needs to be changed, that's fine. If it needs to be just tweaked a little bit, that's fine. This is when you update your idea map because it's going to get you to see all the different perspectives. Once you've got your main claim set, then you're going to get your subclaims and attach the evidence from your note cards to those subclaims. And again, what you have to remember, does the claim you end up making, your final claim, does it directly answer your research question? If it doesn't, there's a problem. Now, careful readers are going to question every part of your argument, so one thing you're going to have to make sure to do is include counterclaims, objections, and limitations in your argumentative essay or presentation. If you're using a piece of evidence that may have some issues with credibility in terms of where it's coming from or how old it is, so for instance, if you're using a newspaper instead of a journal, or if it's 40 years old, doesn't mean you can't include it, but you need to justify it. You also need to include some counterclaims to the points that you're making. I'm really not going to believe you if you don't even offer any other alternatives that other experts are making. And if you can't find any, it's because then your issue really isn't arguable. So you have to note those counterclaims, note objections that other people have to your claim so you can attack it. That's what makes a good, well-rounded argument. Do not make statements, for the love of all that's good and decent. Do not make statements you cannot support with evidence. Don't just say things, okay? Don't just throw out a claim with no evidence. You have destroyed your credibility and your argument with that. Every claim you make must be backed up with evidence. One kind of tip to make good arguments is to build a complex argument out of simple ones. We almost always support a claim with 2 or more reasons or subclaims, which have to be supported with evidence. And again, introduce your counterclaims. Now, does that mean you have to have at least 2 subclaims to a claim? That's not the case. Look, this isn't a core class where you have to have a minimum. You need as many subclaims as you have to, and subclaims of those subclaims, to fully answer that research question. Remember, the goal is to answer the research question. This is a general outline for how you can do this across a paper, starting from the left of the screen, going to the right. And again, remember, there can be subclaims under your subclaims that could have their own pieces of evidence. But again, this is the process that you go through. And of course, your conclusion section can typically be a conclusion or even a solution. Now, here's some tips on assembling subclaims and evidence. When you order your reasons, you're outlining the logical structure of your argument. So you have to make sure that your subclaims directly relate to your main claim. And when you're finding evidence to support those subclaims, it has to be directly aligned with that evidence. Signal phrases help out tremendously because we can establish relevance and credibility. Now, signal phrases we talk about in a later video, you will get there. And you have to make sure you state your evidence precisely. Again, signal phrases help out so much because I can tell if that evidence is relevant to your topic, and I can tell if that evidence is credible so I can believe the subclaims you're making. So please, signal phrases, watch lesson, I believe it's lesson 15. Watch it, it's really, really good. Well, that's all there is for subclaims and reasons. Let's talk about outlines. So you've got your subclaims and the evidence attached to it. You're ready to go. The last thing you're going to do is draft an outline. This is going to be everything from your introduction and how you contextualize the information, introduce your problem, research question, main claim, to what are your subclaims? What are the evidences that attach to those subclaims or those sub-subclaims? What analysis are you doing with those pieces of evidence? How are you stretching it out? What synthesis statements are you making between evidence and claims and pieces of evidence together? You also want to put in your signal phrases into that outline, so you just put them in. In the conclusion, you're going to state your conclusion or solution. Note the implications. What are the consequences of the solution or conclusion? Or what are the implications in that larger field of study? Then in the very end, tell me as a reader, what should I do? Again, I'm reading an argument. You want to either make me believe something or do something. Tell me to call somebody or support this effort, or just tell me to do something. If you've got me believing you, then give me an action to do at the very end. Now, if you'd like to see an example of a good outline, I've got one here. You can go to that slide, click on the link below, and it's got a couple of examples for you. By the end of that outline, you will have the entire structure ready to write your essay. All you gotta do is fill it out. That's my suggestion. If you go through this process, you will have a ton of checkpoints to make sure that you have strong claims, subclaims, evidences, that you've addressed analysis and synthesis, that you've established relevance and credibility with your evidence with signal phrases, and you've got a solution that is backed up to evidence directly. Well, that's all there is for this video. Thanks for hanging around with me. Hope you learned something you didn't know before. Thanks for watching.